Is your church focused more on the opportunities or the obstacles? Talking about that today on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, AJ Matthew. Now, before you say a word, AJ, if you're watching us on YouTube, which you should be watching us on YouTube, you'll notice that AJ does not have his typical home office background behind him. And when he's about to speak, you'll notice the quality of his voices. The sweet dulcet tones of AJ Matthew are somewhat altered based on the quality of the microphone he's on. That is because AJ is in Oaxaca, Mexico right now, on a trip down there working with a church there. And this is a trip that is fully donor supported. So all these times we ask you, hey, go to malphursgroup.com/donate and help us to partner with churches around the world. You're seeing that live in action right now. So AJ, thanks for recording this podcast from Mexico today.
Hola, Scott. Buenos dias.
Please stop.
And I have now used up all of my Spanish language skills with that.
That's not true. You said that you had no hot water. And I asked if you mentioned anything to the staff, and you said, what would I say?
No agua caliente.
Yeah, agua caliente. That's good. Yeah. And then I said, please don't do that.
Here at the Malphurs Group, we said, who's the guy with the worst language skills that we could send around the world, all different places?
It's just the accent. No agua caliente.
Yes, it is a beautiful day in Oaxaca this morning. And yesterday was great. I got here yesterday, and we're super excited about working with this church down here. So I won't bore the audience with all the details, but evangelical church here in Oaxaca, Mexico, reached out to us earlier this year. And they actually, on their own, had been going through Dr. Malphurs' book, Advanced Strategic Planning, and had a team of leaders going through that. And they called us up and said, what can you do to actually help us to implement all this? And we said, we can come down there and we'll do that with your church, just like we do with every other church around the world that asks us for that. But the answer is always yes, but we don't know when. And that was the answer for them as well. And as Scott said, yeah, I mean, people can go hit that donate button. And in this case, we had some donors that said, we have a heart for Mexico and we love what you're doing and we want to make this trip possible. And so within it was just a few months, and we were able to call them back and say, okay, we are funded and let's set some dates. And then here you go. Here I am today. We're starting that work today at 5 p.m. with them, and we'll be working for the next 3 days with their strategic leadership team.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and just so you guys know, we've got other trips coming up later this fall overseas that are all happening because of your support. In addition to all the things we're doing here in the United States, where we next week we're training up four or so new
guides.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Folks who'll be working with churches here in the United States, and also one that we're training new, who's going to be working with churches in Europe. She's based in Germany. So God is doing amazing things through this ministry, and it's happening because of your support. And so we will get to the topic, but I just, it's not every time that we're recording the podcast that AJ is in Mexico. So I thought it was worth taking a couple minutes here on the front end just to maybe make the pitch and say, hey, the ministry you're supporting really makes a difference. And so I know a lot of you all are in budget season right now as the recording of this episode. It's almost budget season for a lot of your churches. And so if you are sitting on a missions team and you think, wow, I like the stuff that the Malphurs group is doing overseas to serve churches, let us know. We would be happy to make a presentation to your missions team so that maybe you could support a trip like the one that AJ is on. I know that lots of times, especially with a missions team, it's easier to support a project than it is just sort of to send something. And so we have specific projects that are coming up over the next year that right now are that are unfunded. So if you would like more information about a specific project that maybe your church could help to fund, reach out to us, leadership@malphursgroup.com. We'd love to talk with you about that. Okay. That's all I'll say about all that, AJ. Let's move on.
All right. On with the show.
On with the show. Actually, I got a good dovetail. So our work with churches overseas is a really good example of a fixed versus growth mindset, just in our own experience as an organization. So what would you say, like, maybe, I know your heart in particular, not that I'm not all behind it, clearly I am, but it really was your heart and passion to say, hey, we need to start serving churches around the world. When would you say that thought process started?
I wrote down, that was part of a vision statement I wrote for TMG in 2015, and it began to unfold in 2020. So,
well, 5 years.
Yeah.
It would be really easy to go, all right, 5 years, it hasn't happened.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you were wrong.
You're right, because I've been wrong before.
And there's a lot of things, actually. This doesn't need to be a hagiography of the Malphurs group, but I think that there are a lot of things we can point to on our own ministry where we could go, oh, that's something that initially wasn't very successful, or the outlook looked pretty bleak. And even sitting here today, there's I can think of half a dozen things that I believe that they can be more and better than they are right now. Yeah. But one thing that people can't say about us is that we're quitters. We're not.
That's true.
We're like a dog with a bone.
We're way past the point that we should have quit.
That's right. And this plays into, and this is what we want to see actually in churches. And it's not totally fruitless. I mean, this is maybe the kind of skipping to the conclusion here, but I want to start at the beginning with this, AJ. Mm-hmm. This thought that the one thing you can't do is quit. You cannot judge what God might do based on the circumstance that you're in today. If you were to do that, you very well could shortchange all the great things. I mean, I know God's ultimately sovereign, right? So there's nothing that can stop what he's going to do. But I think that I think that my theology has room in there to say your participation in what God's going to do can be impacted by your willingness to participate or not, and your willingness to be faithful, and your willingness to stay committed, and your willingness to keep working at things. God is going to do what he's going to do, but he doesn't have to use me.
That's true. Yeah.
That's
my theology as well. Yeah. I think we can choose to participate or not participate at whatever varying level in God's plan. And so, I mean, I just mentioned this yesterday, Scott. Actually, I had recorded a brief video for some brothers that I stay in touch with, that are all kind of working together on some things. And I was like, hey guys, I mean, me being here, I recorded it, just a couple hours after I got here yesterday. I was like, me being here is a product of getting out of my comfort zone, of just saying yes when God had an opportunity there. And so I think the more we live in that space, and we can do that individually and we can do that collectively, the more we, I think, then get the privilege of participating in what God's doing. So yeah. I love churches that have that mindset, and we meet them, Scott. We meet a pastor or a small group that we first have come in contact with, and then strategic leadership teams that we work with. There are way different churches out there. It's a broad spectrum of churches. And we love to help any church that wants to change. But the ones that are the most, I think, exciting are the ones that right from the beginning are just hungry. Like, tell us things that we may not know. Help us work things out.
Yeah.
And just excited to get started and do things.
Yeah.
That is a different mindset than the church that's like, oh, it's been going downhill for a long time, and okay, we'll try something different, or maybe we'll try something new.
Yeah, actually, it's an interesting point. I think some of the churches I've been most excited to work with lately, and we've done this now several times, and I was actually just speaking with a church yesterday who I don't know if we'll work with them or not. We'll see. But it's churches that are disaffiliating from the UMC. And I mean, that situation is just like the definition of tragic. No one wants that to be their reality. Like it's kind of it's a hard thing. It's sad. It's for all the reasons you can think of, it's sad. But these churches are in a completely different mindset. They're like, okay, it's a new day. It's a new season. And they're calling us going, help us figure out where is God calling us to next. And they're not only excited about the future, they're willing to put in the effort. And so this is I guess, to finally segue out of maybe an introduction of this topic, is what we want to land on today. This idea of a fixed versus a growth mindset. And so and why this is important for ministry. So let's just start, AJ, with defining what those terms mean generally, and then kind of how they apply to church. So,
I guess more of the I guess maybe probably the research and the study of these terms defining, growth versus fixed mindset is more on the individual. It definitely applies to teams, but it's more on the individual. And as basic as believing in a growth mindset, believing that our intelligence and abilities, and we're kind of speaking to intelligence different from knowledge and more of like core intelligence, can be developed over time. The growth mindset says, I can improve in this. I can read, I can study, I can take classes, I can experience things, and I can improve over time with effort and good decision making and learning from mistakes. Versus a fixed mindset that it's basically the opposite of that. I mean, feeling like intelligence is rather fixed, maybe just how we're wired, and that there's just not really as much our I don't know, perhaps some abilities might be able to improve, but for the most part, things just kind of are what they are. And I think that mindset then is more to like, I just have to work with what I'm given. Maybe we can make the best out of this, but maybe not. And I think we see in the real world that this plays out in interesting ways. I think the attitude of the growth mindset overcomes so many obstacles that the fixed mindset just believes maybe can't be overcome. And already, I'm sure just by this explanation, you listener are already thinking about your team environment and maybe some particular people on your team that you got. Yeah, I know exactly how this works in reality because I've got one or two or a bunch of people in my church like that, or maybe over here. Like, I can think of another person on the growth mindset who is like always the encourager, always pushing forward, and maybe even highly successful and have overcome some odds. So I'm sure you're already putting the application in place.
I think this is a challenging thing. I think we see this in society. I think one thing we have to recognize is there is such a thing as reality, right? And the question then is, how do you respond to reality? So I think that people who are more pessimistic, they might just say, well, I'm just realistic. I'm looking at reality, and they say it is what it is. And I'm not interested in sort of this Pollyanna, pixie dust, Disneyfication of reality, where I can be whatever I want to be, and I'm not a big fan of Disney lately. I'll just say this, but I'm a big fan of like classic Disney. The if you can dream it, then you can do it. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Like old Epcot, or just a suitcase and a dream. Like I love the sheer optimism of Walt Disney, and but the reality is that AJ is cringing inside so much that I'm using Walt Disney as an example. Walt Disney had a really successful cartoon in a character called Oswald. Some of you will know this, some of you will not. Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Did you know this?
Never heard of him.
Okay. Very popular cartoon, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. And it was owned by, I believe, Universal owned the rights. So they fired Walt Disney and they kept the character Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. And so he was penniless. He had no prospects. And he famously kind of makes this train journey from New York all the way back to back home across the country. And while on the train, so it's like, here's the thing, like, here's reality. Reality is I've been fired. I don't have the intellectual rights, the rights to this character that I invented. And that's reality. And so some people look at that and then go, well, it is what it is. There's nothing I can do about that. And wallow. Other people look at that and go, all right, it is what it is. What do I have? And what can I do with that? What he knew was, I know how to make a successful character. And I know how to animate. And I have people on my team who are good at this kind of thing. And it's on this famous train ride that he invents the character Mickey Mouse. And everything kind of spawns from there. So you can hate Disney all you want now, but I do think that this story is instructive. A lot of churches look at reality and go, it is what it is. And this is the hand we've been dealt, and there's nothing we can do about it. And, we're just going to try to make ends meet as best we can. Other churches take reality and go, all right, this is the situation. Well, what do we have? And is this not what Jesus does? The disciples look at the situation when there's all these thousands of people who are hungry, and they say, these people need to eat.
Yeah. What are we going to do?
We don't have the money. We don't have the money. We don't have the food. We don't have any of this. And Jesus asks them, well, what do you have? And they go and they look, and they got what, 5 loaves and 2 fish, and this is it. And then it's not until after they respond to this question and start passing out the food that they do have, that they then realize that they have more than enough. And so I think that this is the difference between, and I'm not suggesting that God is going to actually, you know what? I am suggesting that God will miraculously do things with the little that you have, if you will actually start doing something with the little you have. I'm not suggesting he will multiply food necessarily, but metaphorically, at least, or in your own context, God can do a lot with what to you seems very little. Yeah. And this is the difference.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like you have to confront reality, but then what do you do from that point?
Yeah, we're not going to go TV evangelist here and say, you will
sow a seed,
have great riches. Again, everything is in the context of working within God's will for your church. But absolutely. If you seek him and you're in that right space, then I believe you find success in that space. Yeah.
Are you railing against me suggesting that God will do a miracle? I think I'm just saying.
Oh no, I'm not against. I don't disbelieve miracles.
I mean, there's a command, like he's like, feed them, and they're like, we don't have it. Yeah. And then he's like, what do you have? So yeah, it's in the context of Jesus has commanded your church to go make disciples.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, and he said, the gates of hell will not prevail against a church that's on the move. And then you can say all kinds of things that we hear. So let's maybe start with that. What are some of the negative thinking that we hear from churches all the time? Let's just
Oh
start listing some
gosh.
things off.
Yeah. Location, condition of building, size
Yep.
of building, size of congregation, age
We're
of congregation.
landlocked.
Yeah.
Our parking lot is bad.
Yeah. 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 We don't have no talent, music talent, lack of music talent.
Yeah. Yep.
No
Everyone in our
volunteers
church is
for
old.
children.
Yeah. We have no families.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have money. All of these things might be true, by the way. You might be
They're not
landlocked. Your
making that
parking might
stuff
be
up.
terrible. Your location might not be awesome. Like
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that there aren't there's reality. Like your church
Mhm.
has to deal in reality.
Mhm.
The question then is, how do you respond to that? It's
Mhm.
like all I'm hearing is excuses for why you're not doing the thing that God is calling you to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, not to kind of jump ahead, even though
Yeah, no, go ahead, jump ahead.
whenever we talk about vision, Scott, in strategic envisioning now, we talk about what is the current reality of your church and of your city, but we also talk about what are you uniquely positioned to do about some of these issues internally and externally. You cannot be of the mindset of only talking about your present reality without talking. You have to then shift that and talk about, so what do we have that could affect change in the future? So, I mean, maybe that's actually kind of the hook here in this discussion of growth mindset versus fixed mindset. I mean, we chart that, we put that on a page and we would write that down. Yeah, what's bad right now? What's bad in our city? How bad is the divorce rate and drug abuse and homelessness? And how bad are we internally here that we don't have enough leaders volunteering for things, and families have left to go to that big church down the street with the new cool building. But what do we have that we can work with? What do we have that God can still use? Because he started this thing, right? I mean, we're here because this is what God wanted somebody to do in the past. And if we believe that he still has work for us to do, then we just need to take an account of what we have. And that's in, people, manpower, in, physical property things, in money, whatever it is, and put it to use. That's the problem, I think, is that we've lost sight of still the blessings that we have and how we can use them for greatness in the kingdom. And instead we focus too much on maybe the fluff or the ideals. And maybe, even just some personal desires that we have. And that can hold us back.
Yeah, I want to read to you 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 3. Start with verse 3. He says, his divine power, so Jesus's divine power, has granted to us all things that pertain to life and godliness. So we have everything that you possibly need for life and godliness. You've got it already by grace, through faith, through his divine power. He has granted this to you. You don't deserve it. You didn't earn it, but you've got it. Then he says, he skipped down to verse 5, for this very reason, for the reason that you've gotten everything that you need, he says, make every effort to supplement your faith with virtue, and virtue with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control, and self-control with steadfastness, and steadfastness with godliness, and godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love. For if these qualities are yours and are increasing, they keep you from being ineffective or unfruitful. And so I think for a lot of us, we get stuck on all the things we don't have. We don't have the right location. We don't have all the money. We don't have all the resources. We don't have the young people. It's like, well, you have everything you need for life and godliness by his divine power. Everything you must have, you have. Therefore, make every effort to supplement that faith with all of these qualities so that you won't be, it's like, why am I not being fruitful then? Oh, it's because you're taking that divine power for granted and not layering on top of that every effort. it doesn't make every effort to then earn your salvation. It's like you have your salvation, you have everything you need. Therefore, make every effort to supplement that and then become fruitful. And so, what I see a lot of churches, AJ, is I just hear the excuses, all the things that we don't have.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but the thing you really need, you do have. Therefore, let's start making every effort, and then let's see what God does.
Yeah, effort's the key, though. Effort is the key. It doesn't happen without good planning and work and preparation and prayer, and perseverance. But it requires effort.
Yeah, and what I see is a lot of churches confusing effort with routine. I go, oh, I am putting in effort. I'm there every Sunday. Put a sermon together, and I really try to make something good. Okay, but is it okay? Fair enough. But would you say you're making every effort, or you're in a routine?
Yeah.
And what I have found in my experience now, I've been doing this full time for, I think I'm going into my 8th year. The 100% the difference is not location. It's not money.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, how cool the pastor is. It's none of these things. It's the willingness of the church, in particular, the leaders of the church, to make every effort.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah. Washing machines work hard, but they won't paint your house. So it's about as country of a.
I don't know what does that even mean.
That actually has some meaning. The washing machine, it's working hard. Okay. I mean, you can't deny it. It is working hard, but if you need to get something else done, you're going to have to work hard in a different way. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I gotcha. Yeah. I think that, so to kind of loop this back to fixed versus growth mindset, what we see in churches is very often this fixed mindset. I have this set of this reality, and this reality is beset with all kinds of challenges. And the challenges that you have, for some reason, this is really annoying. You think whatever challenges you have are unique or that much harder than anyone else's. Mm-hmm. And it's not true. They're almost never unique. And they're almost, and they are never any harder than anyone else's. They might be different, but they're not harder. Challenges are challenges wherever you're at. I'm not even suggesting that some challenges are on a spectrum. Like, you can walk into a church that's got a lot of cash, and that's obviously a little bit easier, I suppose, than churches that have no cash. But even that's not necessarily true, because then they have a different set of challenges. If there's a bunch of cash, there's probably a bunch of people you gotta work through in order to spend it.
Yeah, moving into application for this, I think this definitely starts with intentional leadership. And I mean, one of our points here is that we praise effort in the work that begins to happen, but church leadership has got to be out front championing this with hopefulness about the future. You cannot be Pastor Eeyore and successfully move people outside of a space in which it looks like everything is bleak. You cannot. I mean, no one's going to follow a leader like that. So it might take in you personally first a change from a fixed to a growth mindset, just in your attitude, in your words. And that's going to be vitally important. And you can't fake that either. I mean, you can fake that in the kickoff meeting, but you will not sustain work if you truly are not hopeful about the future and know that for the long haul, you have got to continue to encourage these people and work very hard at it. So I think that's where this has to start, Scott.
Yeah. And I think that continuing to praise that effort, I saw actually something on, I don't know, maybe social media or something somewhere, some so-called parenting expert, which I'm always a little bit leery of anyway, but I did think that this was good advice. They were talking about how important it is with your kids when they're young, when they make something and they do a drawing or whatever, and the drawing is never that good, obviously because they're small children. But some research has been done that if you tell the kid, wow, you're such a good artist, that kid, the quality of that kid's sort of performance stays relatively static. Versus if you say to the kid, you are working so hard, you've put so much effort into that, and you are becoming a great artist. Those kids then continue to improve, and it's both a compliment. Both things are a compliment. But one is focusing on that effort, and the other is just, it's almost empty praise because you're telling them they're already great. No improvement needed. And I think that's not helpful. And I think likewise with our churches, we need to continue to celebrate the effort and go, hey, everything we need, we've already got in Jesus.
Yeah.
But we can supplement that faith. And that's what we're doing. And look, I'm seeing you are working so hard, and here's progress that we're making, and God is doing something, but we're not where we want to be yet. And continuing to celebrate that and to acknowledge the effort is really helpful.
Yeah. Of course, it would appear Picasso's kindergarten drawings, somebody probably told him this is really good, and he just kept doing it like his whole life.
Randoms
not supposed to both be on the same side, Pablo.
Hey, random Pablo Picasso fact and Scott Ball fact. I used to really be into Pablo Picasso for I was in 5th grade, and it was for 5 minutes. But his earlier stuff's really good. Way more realistic. Okay. It's the later he went in life, the things got more abstract and weird. So one of the tragedies of Picasso in my mind is that he was this really talented, realistic artist. And yeah. Anyway, okay, moving on.
Moved his way back to kindergarten art. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll get canceled for that one. All right. Tracking milestones, Scott. We got to work through this systematically. We're big fans of systems, making plans, and establishing what exactly is the work that we need to do, and having point by point steps to get there. So that's got to be a part of it. And being able to track that stuff. That goes back to the previous point also. If we want to celebrate, we better determine what are we going to celebrate? What is the reason for celebration? And I think that is vitally important, especially in almost maybe the worse off the church is, the more vital it is that we have incremental points that we can celebrate to try to build momentum. But then on the other hand, the church that, is maybe they're kind of okay, they could do better. Might have to work harder, I guess, to determine what really is the big win for us. Maybe there's not going to be necessarily some low-hanging fruit that we can go, wow, look at that simple change and how effective it is. So it's different effort that you have to put in. But yeah, I'm all for celebrating those wins and continuing to encourage people.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to kind of wrap up today by sharing a real life story, if that's all right.
Hey, story. Yes.
Yeah. Let me get this pulled up. This is from, and I won't share his name, although he did tell me that I could. So, but I won't put him all over the the internet. But this is a pastor that I worked with. I guess it would have been 2 years ago. About 2 years ago. And this is a church that was very close to closing. We won't work with a church unless it has critical mass. We got to see critical mass. Otherwise, if you don't have enough people to turn it around, then it really is time to start talking about closing or getting adopted or, being replanted or something like that. This church still had critical mass, but it was close to the line. and they still had resources and things like this. But I'm just going to read this. That'd be all right?
Sure.
Okay. So he says, we are in budget season again, and I reread our cover letter from 2021. So this is a message he sent to me last year. So this was in 2022. We're in budget season again, and I reread our cover letter from 2021 that we passed out to the church for our budget proposal. It was cut by more than $70,000. The church had shrunk 15 to 20% that year. And the letter read just very sad, but that was the mood of everything. We were not sure if we would be needing to sell the building or even if we had a future. However, this year in 2022, a year later, our entire staff is hopeful. Here's a brief list of what's happened in a year. We're experiencing growth, not bursting at the seams, but noticeable growth and much less loss. Younger families are joining. We have a mission guiding us. We have consistent outreach in the neighborhood right behind the church once a month. We've had people from the outreach consistently show to our services. Church members are taking them out for dinner. We have a small group ministry now established, prayer ministry happening. We're seeing a healthy worship leader transition. We updated and refreshed our belief statement and our governing board processes for the first time in 50 years. Still lots more changes coming in 2023. Basically, our staff and church is hopeful. It is the first hopeful year we've had since they had some dramatic events that almost destroyed the church in 2018. And one staff member told me that it's the first hopeful year, even way further back than that. I just want to share that story because this is what success looks like. Mm-hmm. Success doesn't look like, and now we're bursting at the seams and everything. It's like we're overcrowded and we've got to sell our building. That's like, okay, we are experiencing growth. We are being consistent, reaching our neighborhood every month. And when people show up to that, we build a relationship with them. We take them out to dinner, and it's not just the pastor. Church members are taking these people out to dinner, and like this is what success looks like.
Yeah,
this is it, and it does bring hope, AJ, and it does bring real change, and it does pull churches back from the brink. And the difference is not, do they have challenges? Yes, they still have challenges. Mm-hmm. The difference is, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
How are you going to respond to that?
Right. Yep. Got to persevere. Yeah. Hey, to kind of, just another little, we've kind of used our own story in part of this for today, but it was noted. Well, first of all, I'm in Oaxaca. This will be the first time that the Malphurs group has done the strategic envisioning process in Spanish, just natively in Spanish. And it's not me doing it. Our
thank goodness,
our amazing bilingual teammate Yvonne Garcia arrives in about 2 hours from now. But Yvonne joined our team 3 years ago and began translating our printed materials into Spanish because we had a vision for reaching Spanish language churches. So again, just Yvonne having persevered for 3 years, looking for the opportunity to be able to do this. Just want to leave that encouragement that wherever your church is, whatever your situation is, if you've got a glimmer of something in the future, write it down, start talking about it, start making a plan for it, and persevere through the effort that it might take and the waiting, just to get where you want to be. Because if God's in it, you'll get there. So continue to seek Him first and align yourself with what He wants to do. That's where you'll find success. So, yeah.
I want to ask this question, AJ, and I don't know the answers, and you probably don't off the top of your head either. Maybe one of our bright, wise, scholarly listeners will know this. How many years was King David a shepherd before he was anointed? I mean, he was anointed when he was a teenager, right?
I believe he was. Yeah. Okay. He was still in student ministry.
Yeah. Still student. And how many years was he anointed before he actually became king?
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. On the run from Saul and yeah.
Well, and even before that, I mean, he's not initially on the run. Initially he's pals. um, Goliath and all that. So I guess what I'm saying is, you not that he wasn't without his failures, obviously some notable ones, but you have even a great leader like David,
Yeah.
who at one point then, as a teenager gets anointed, and at some point he must have been like, is this thing happening? I mean, like, wasn't I anointed? Right.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm saying is, if you're not seeing the change you want to see yet, it doesn't mean that God has not anointed you.
There you go.
Can't give up. Don't give up.
That's your marching orders. All right. Well, hey, thanks for being with us in a slightly different version of the Church Revitalization Podcast on from two different countries. We came to you today. This was episode 203. So you can go to malphursgroup.com/203 for today's show notes. And while you're there, this is a great plug for donating to the ministry. Up in the top right corner says donate. We've got trips coming up still this year to Turkey, to England, to Panama, to Germany, and then next year, several opportunities to be on the African continent. We need your help to do that. So pray about that. We'd love to partner with your church or just you personally as well. Thanks for being with us. We will see you again next week.